Welcome everyone to CyberTitan Day 2, our virtual speaker summit. I want to welcome back our teams, coaches, mentors, families, supporters, sponsors, and anyone else that is with us today. I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe traditional territory. Congratulations to all of our teams. Yesterday was a super exciting day. I can't even explain how much fun it was to watch you guys for 6 hours. Your energy through the entire thing was fantastic. You kept that Discord channel completely buzzing the entire day, and it was so much fun to watch. I hope you guys had as much fun competing as I did watching. From our development team side, I want to say that we're all very proud of you. You exceeded all of our expectations, and we're really looking forward to seeing the results tomorrow. We're still reviewing everything that you sent in, be it your tickets or tallying all the scores, so I honestly have no idea who has won yet. So stay tuned for tomorrow and we'll all learn together. If you do have any questions during our speaker summit, please feel free to use the comment/chat section if you're on the live stream. If you don't have that, so for our teams, you can also use the Discord channel, of which I'm sure you're all aware now. So I'd like to introduce our MC for the day, Diana Barbosa. Diana is the National Director of CyberTitan. Welcome, Diana.
Great, thank you. And I am so happy to be here. I was in the background yesterday, keeping in touch with what was going on, and it definitely was an exciting day. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat. I am literally on the edge of my seat, waiting for the results. But as happens every year, and for those of you who are returning teams, definitely a great job as always. I think Ian and Octopi always try to do something to stump everybody, but everybody comes through, so great work. But for today, my job is to introduce all of our esteemed speakers. So with that, we're going to welcome Shannon Parker from the Saskatoon Police Services. Shannon is the chair of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, E-Crimes Cyber Council, and is a member of the Canadian National Policing Services Cybercrime Committee as a cyber strategy and digital forensics leader in the international cyber community. Before entering a career in law enforcement, Shannon was a high school math teacher when she was seconded by the Saskatoon Public Division. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, good morning. Can I have a thumbs up if somebody can hear me? I think we're good. Okay, great. Yes, sounds good. Okay, I am so happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invite. And thanks for the great little intro there. My plan today is I'm just going to talk a little bit about my policing career and how I've interacted with science and technology. And then I thought I'd share some numbers with you all around cybersecurity and sort of the current state of affairs in the country. And yeah, and then at the end, I'm just going to wrap up with a few things for you to consider or maybe think about. And yeah, I really just encourage you to seriously consider a career down the road in the STEM area. There's lots of cool things going on there. Now I do have a PowerPoint kind of here, so I'm going to be hopefully kind of looking down every now and again and kind of flowing through this way. I don't have anything to put up on the screen. You just get to see my lovely little face. So just a general comment, when I was in elementary school and high school, I was such a number lover and number nerd that I would have just loved to have had the opportunity to go to something called CyberTitan or some sort of cyber camp or math camp or science and technology camp that I just, yeah, I wish I could be there in person. And I mean, I know we all wish we could be there in person this year, silly COVID. But yeah, I just think this is such a cool opportunity for all of you kids, young adults that, yeah, I'm a little envious at the moment. So yeah, great job, ICTC, in putting this together. And Ian, yeah, I just think it's very cool opportunity. So who the heck am I? You've kind of introduced me. Yeah, currently I'm a police officer here at the Saskatoon Police Service. I work in the tech crimes unit here, and I do digital forensics. I do cybercrime investigations and cybersecurity investigations. But that's not where I started. Yeah, I took a bit of an interesting route. 11:23. I took a bit of an interesting route into law enforcement. Yeah, I was a high school math teacher. And so I started out sort of with this love of numbers, a love of helping people, love of problem solving. And so that's what my 2 university degrees are in, right? I have an arts degree and an education degree, and I'm sort of math-focused, math-centric brain. I don't have a formal computer science degree or computer science background. And the reason I share that is, don't think that if you want to have a life or a career in STEM that you need to kind of have this formal, post-secondary education with this computer science stamp. There's lots of other routes you can take. Lots of really cool and interesting routes. So high school math teacher, love numbers. And then, shortly into my career, I guess 6-7 years into teaching, I said to myself, you know what? I'm interested in doing some other things. And that for me was getting into law enforcement. And little did I know that I would be able to have a STEM career in law enforcement. It's crazy. So about maybe 10 years ago at the Saskatoon Police Service, they had a job opening, and it was to do digital forensics. And obviously I had a math background, but not a computer science background. And I was really lucky that through my policing organization, in the area I was going to do digital forensics in, child exploitation, there was a lot of funding money available. And so through that funding and the money, I was able to get a lot of really cool on-the-job training. So I went down to Florida and I took a couple weeks of training there. And I am in IASIS, an International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists, CFCE, Forensic Computer Trained Digital Forensics Examiner. And that's my sort of formal working designation. And then beyond that, year after year after year, the way digital forensics in the law enforcement community works is you get to go to all this training. So you sign up, you pay some money, you hop on a plane, and you go to Houston and you take a couple weeks of training. And then you come back and you work, and then you hop on another plane and you go to Washington, D.C. and you do some more training. You come back, you hop on a train, and then you go to Salt Lake City, right? Or somewhere across Canada or international, and you get all this vendor related training, software specific training, tool centric training. And so that's sort of my education background. As far as sort of my skill set right now that I'm using in regards to digital forensics, cybersecurity, and cybercrime. Now, I've sort of worked in 4 main sort of digital forensics or STEM areas in this digital forensics role. So when I'm talking about digital forensics, it's a science. It's looked at as a science, and labs need to be certified to have digital forensics examiners. And there's kind of national and international standards associated with that. But digital forensics is preserving digital evidence, isolating that evidence, corroborating that evidence, logging it, and analyzing it. So what the heck does that mean? That means that in law enforcement, if we're doing an investigation and they think there might be some devices associated to this investigation that might hold some digital data or evidence, they need a digital forensics examiner to come in and help them with it. You might liken it to if there's a murder and there's a bloody knife, right? The major crimes or the murder investigators aren't going to deal with the bloody knife. They're going to call out the forensic identification section to deal with that piece of evidence. And that's kind of the same thing with digital evidence. So we have investigators, but then we have people that respond specifically to the digital evidence. And then my job is to look at that digital footprint. So we would get together an investigation, we'd tee up maybe a search warrant, we would attend to a residence or a location where we think there could be some evidence. And then my job as a digital forensics examiner is to go into that residence. And my job then is to make contact with all of the different items or devices that I think contain digital evidence or have the capacity to potentially contain digital evidence or digital artifacts. So if I go into a home, I could be seizing, preserving, isolating, analyzing, looking at a desktop tower, a laptop, an external hard drive, a USB. And now we know today with all the IoT, right? The Internet of Things devices, I could be interrogating someone's Apple Watch. I could be interrogating a router. I could be looking at an Alexa system, a Nest system, a home security system. I could be looking at data captured or stored in a thermostat or in a fridge or an alarm clock, right? So wrap your brain around that. Any and all sort of devices, network devices, routers, anything that can contain digital evidence. Yeah, that's my job, which I think is kind of cool and really fun. So yeah, I've done digital forensics for years. And then normally what you do is you take some of those devices after you do a bit of a triage and you decide what device is important and not important, and you bring it back into a lab environment, and then you spend days and hours and weeks with these devices. Yeah, and you try and find evidence. You try and find evidence that's sitting in allocated space, unallocated space. You deal with cloud storage, you deal with encryption issues, you do memory forensics, browser forensics. Yeah, there's all sorts of different subsets in this whole digital forensics paradigm. Now, the cool thing, if you're thinking or even considering, maybe you didn't even know it was a thing, but now you know it's a thing. If you're considering digital forensics, you know what? I'm a formal law enforcement officer, and I've gone through, obviously, all of my formal law enforcement training, but you don't necessarily need to be a law enforcement officer to do digital forensics. There's all sorts of civilian positions all across the country in all different agencies at provincial, municipal, and federal levels that are looking for digital forensics or digitally minded people who have formal training, not formal training, to do these types of jobs. So don't discount yourself if you're thinking, I'm not getting into law enforcement. That's okay. There's all sorts of job opportunities in and around that law enforcement arena where you could be a civilian member, a non-sworn member. The other area I've spent a lot of time in over the years is just basic evidence capture and analysis. And that has to do more with, looking at social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then software applications, WhatsApp or Snapchat, and then going online and looking at gaming platforms, looking at Discord, looking at Twitch, looking at chat rooms, Reddit, so on and so forth. So I've done a lot of work in that space. The third area I've done a lot of work in is what I would call open source intelligence or open source investigations. And that, as we all know, or maybe we don't know, there's kind of three main chunks out there in network land, right? We know we have that clear space where we go to the Googles, where we have information that's publicly available and readily available for our Googles or our Firefoxes or our Safari browsers and search engines. So we know we can all harvest open source or publicly available information sitting in that part of the network. But we also know there's another large part of the network, probably about 96% of the entire network in the whole world, is what we call the deep web or deep part of that internet space. And this is the space, right, where usually it's locked up and not accessible. And this is like medical records or banking information. So stuff that you and I sitting at our home, right, we couldn't just Google or search or look at some of this information. But this is a space where dark actors, threat actors, bad actors, persons up to nefarious types of online activity, they like to try and gain access to this deep space. And so I spend a lot of time doing investigations in that space. And then the third kind of space in the network, which we hear talked about a whole lot, is that dark web, right? And we don't really know how big the dark web is. So we would say the clear web or the public space or the open source space that we all operate is maybe 4% of all the networks. Then we say that deep space, medical records, banking information, maybe about 96% of the space. So you're like, hey, lady, that's 100%. There's no space left. Well, you're right. The reason we can't assign a number to that dark web, right, that decentralized series of volunteer networks, relays, nodes that make up that dark space, it's an unindexed space. So we don't know how big that space is. We don't know how big or how wide it is. And so through doing some of my investigations in the cybercrime world and cybersecurity world, I sometimes really get the really cool opportunity to navigate into some of that dark space, right? Using the Onion router, some other pop-up operating systems. Yeah, some really cool stuff goes on in there. And then sort of the last or the fourth maybe area where I'd spend a lot of my time and effort is in the cybersecurity space, right? We've all heard about, cybersecurity breaches, right? CyberTitan, these cool scenarios you guys are working on. Yeah, cybersecurity, it's big. And in dealing with these breaches, not always, but often, there's a ransomware component, right? So we've had a bad actor somehow access a network, usually through user action. Portions of the network, files, systems, photos, servers get encrypted. And then the only way for a user action or an organization to regain access to those encrypted files is to pay a ransom to these bad actors. Now, usually the bad actors, they ask for money, and they ask for money in the form of cryptocurrency. So again, I was just talking about kind of that dark space, that decentralized networks. The cryptocurrency space, blockchain technology, right? The public ledger that everybody can see and use. yeah, the reason cryptocurrency is used so often in a lot of these cybersecurity investigations, cryptocurrency investigations, is it's got this large anonymity factor to it. But in law enforcement, I have access to a lot of really cool cryptocurrency tracing tools, investigative tools. I have access to some malware analysis tools. And so I also spend a lot of time and space in that arena there, the whole cybersecurity, ransomware, cryptocurrency world. So those are kind of the 4 areas, kind of based on a lot of that initial training I received, that kind of international designation. I've also been qualified as an expert in both provincial court and Queen's Bench Court as a digital forensics expert. So sort of through my training and my court designations and doing all this work in these all 4 areas, I love it. I love doing technological investigations because, as you can hear from all those 4 areas, there's such a wide variety of different areas to get involved in. And so I feel over time, you know, because I have this wide variety of different areas within this tech crime job description, whether it's digital forensics, working in kind of that social media area, or OSINT or cybersecurity, there's variety. Things are always changing and I'm always learning new technology, new tools. I love it. So something for y'all to consider. I have a couple fun little stories. I'm not sure if we have a whole lot of time to get into them. We'll maybe see if we do at the end. Now, as far as the opportunities in STEM and policing, yeah, let's I guess first talk about some numbers. Numbers. What do we know about cybercrime? We know that cybercrime costs are going to hit $6 trillion. I know that's just a big number, but think of it in these terms. They think that cybercrime and the damage costs associated to all this cybercrime happening in the cybersecurity arena, whether it's in the clear space, that deep space, or the dark web space, all of those damage costs, they're saying, are more profitable than all the illegal global drug trade in the whole world. So if you think about like Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, Mexican drug cartels, cocaine, meth, all the drugs sold in all of the entire world, they're saying that the cybercrime costs are more than all that added up together. So it's a big number. It's a really big number. We know that as a result of this big number, cybersecurity spending is going through the roof. The other reason cybersecurity spending is going through the roof is this whole new emergence of the Internet of Things. Okay, and I mentioned that earlier, the IoT devices. So Apple Watches, thermostats that hold data, fridges that hold data, front security door locks that hold data, Nest systems that hold data, Alexa systems that hold data, your gaming consoles, right? I could go into your home, grab your PS4 or your Nintendo Switch, and I can harvest digital artifacts off that. And so anyway, with this massive burgeoning of IoT devices, we have more devices than ever connected to the network. And what that means is we have the attack surface area for all these bad actors being larger and bigger than ever. They're saying because of all these IoT devices, the other thing we know is that kind of because of COVID, but just part and parcel because of just the way things are evolving and trending, we have more people than ever connected to networks, right? So it's hard to find a space in the entire world where you can't really sit down on your phone or your laptop or your iPad and access a network. So not only do we have more devices than ever connected to networks, we have more networks and more people online than ever. So you take those two things and you smash them together, and it really means the attack surface area for all these nefarious people and these nefarious folks is massive. And so what does this mean for you guys? It means jobs. It means that ransomware is not going anywhere. The blockchain is not going anywhere. The clear, deep, and dark webs aren't going anywhere. These networks aren't going anywhere, and these devices aren't going anywhere. So even if you don't want to, take on a STEM job in the law enforcement realm, just cybersecurity in general, there's so many different opportunities, whether you're interested in software, hardware, network, decryption, forensics, network architecture, on and on and on. There's just so many opportunities. And so what I want you to take away from this is the opportunities are here, it's happening, and they're not going away. There's only going to be more and more job opportunities for you in all of those different areas. So just a couple more minutes just to wrap up here, and then I'll give an opportunity for questions. But just some things in general to consider when you're thinking about science and technology. Yeah, will there be a job for you? Yes, I think I've hopefully just painted that picture for you. 2, there's kind of 5 little questions I think you should ask yourself. And really it's about self-reflection. So I'm going to make a giant leap here. It was really cool when I saw kind of those rolling photos at the beginning and saw all these cool teams and groups of kids and young adults together. So obviously most of you are here because you're engaged and sort of generally interested in computers. But I guess if you're considering like a long-term, right, sort of maybe career commitment, these are sort of maybe 5 questions you should sit down in a quiet space and maybe ask yourself about. And if you're not sure of the answers, maybe talk to like a coach or a mentor or a parent or an aunt or uncle or cousin or a friend, and somebody that might help you kind of walk through these things, and it might help you decide if STEM is the way you want to go. So ask yourself, what type of social environment do you want to work in? Do you like to work as an individual day in and day out, or do you kind of like to work in teams? This is going to come as a shock because I'm comfortable talking in front of people, but I'm a super loner. So I'm never more happy than I am sitting day in and day out with just my computer in my little room, and I don't really need to interact with people. And you know what? That's okay. That's just how I am. You might be like that, or you know what? You might be like here at the service, we have somebody that works in computer project management, and they look at sort of larger network type projects and architect design. And he is really into project management and working with teams. And so, maybe ask yourself, what kind of job would appeal to me? Do I want to kind of be a bit of a loner and do my thing? Or am I comfortable maybe working in a group of people all day, every day? The second thing you should ask yourself is, what's your skill set? What are you good at? So not what you're interested in, but what are you good at? Like, are you good at solving problems? Are you good at jigsaw puzzles? Are you good at Sudokus? Maybe you're more of a creative thinker. Maybe you're good at like seeing things spatially or visually, right? So what are you good at? The third thing I would think you should ask yourself about is, what's your personality? Like, are you a problem solver? Do you like to maybe analyze things? What's your personality? What are you inclined? What's your kind of default? What's your default set? Fourth, education. You can, I think, have a job in STEM, whether you take an hour course, a week-long course, a month-long course, a year-long course, whether you take an online course, whether you go to like a Polytechnic Institute for a year or 2 years, or if you go on to post, beyond that and you want to, go to university for 3 or 4 years and get an arts degree, or you want to get a master's degree. I think the sky's the limit. And I think you have all sorts of options depending on sort of what educational route appeals to you. And yeah, you know what? Finances might work into that. So please don't feel limited by numbers and don't feel limited by timelines. There's a lot of really great educational options out there, kind of formally and informally. And then the last question I want you to ask yourself, and I'll leave you with this, and you might hear this all the time when you're deciding or being asked to decide on a career, you're thinking about things, what are you passionate about? And so what does that mean? It means what makes you happy. And this sounds really nerdy, but what makes me happy in my world is sitting down and working with a computer or working with a device and trying to solve a problem. And from that, I've been really fortunate and lucky. I've been able to kind of weave that into a career. And as a result of my really cool career and working in STEM, I've had a whole lot of really amazing opportunities to work with a lot of really interesting people, to meet a lot of interesting people, to go a lot of places. I have a good job. I got good benefits, and I make pretty good money. And on top of that, I'm passionate what I do, and I'm happy every day. That's kind of it. So what I wanted to do was just share with you kind of, what my work world looks like, kind of some of my nerd experience, and then share with you kind of what the numbers are and what the future might look like for you. And then to kind of wrap that up with just kind of 5 different questions to sort of ask yourself and help you decide if you want to end up in STEM. So do we want to do questions, or how are we doing?
You're muted, Diana. But that was excellent, Shannon. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So there's no questions. Okay, great. Thank you so very much, Shannon. We have our germ team, and what I would do is if I encourage anybody that if you do think of something that you'd like to ask Shannon, please send those to Sheena, and we will make sure to get back in touch with our speakers and get an answer for you. So sometimes it's a little hard to be put on the spot, but perhaps as you're brushing your teeth tonight, something might pop in your head. Feel free to ask the question. Thanks again for your time, Shannon.
Okay, have a great time, you guys. Wish I was there. Talk soon.
Wonderful. So next up, we have our guests and supporters of CyberTitan as well. We have a panel from Durham College. We have Ali Harji, who works at the AI Hub at the Center for Cybersecurity and Innovation at Durham College and has over 14 years of experience working on a variety of technology implementations in the government, academic, and not-for-profit sectors. We also have Rukmani Ramasubaralu, who's a full-time professor in the Computer Systems Advanced Diploma Program in the School of Business and IT Management, and is a Cisco certified instructor and an authorized AWS academic instructors. Joining them as well is Saba Siddiqui, who did her bachelor's in electrical and computer engineering, followed by a master's in computer engineering from the University of Waterloo, with a specialization in artificial intelligence. Welcome to you all.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. Dan, a quick question. I do have some slides. Is now a good time to share my screen from my other device?
I believe so. I'm going to pull that over to our technical who's telling me yes. Go ahead.
All right. Let's see if this is coming up. Let's give it a second or two. Hey, voila. Fantastic. We are up and good to go. So hey, everybody. As Diana so kindly mentioned, my name is Ali. All I do a lot is tweet and engage on social media quite a bit. But the two other individuals that I have with you today are extremely important for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're highly accomplished in the space of cybersecurity, in the space of AI and data. But more importantly than that, they've got some very, very useful tips for all of you who would be listening to this presentation, and all of you who might be thinking about a way in which you can get involved in the world of cybersecurity or in the world of data and whatever else have you. So before I jump into anything from here on in, I'll tell you a little bit about myself later on, because I'm really not that interesting. The people that you want to listen to are Rukmani and Saba. So Rukmani, let's start off with you. Can you tell our audience just a little bit about what is it that you do and what got you into the space of cybersecurity when you were a student? What were you thinking about, and how did you land up in this role that you're in today? So Rukmani, I'll give the stage to you to just do a very quick introduction.
Good afternoon, all. So as Ali has introduced, my name is Rukmani, and I work as a professor in Durham College. You all know that. But when I was a student, I didn't have access to computers or internet. It was very limited. And 20 years ago, only in college settings, lab environment, we got access to computers. And it's very difficult to know and learn much about it. But even if you want to use the internet, you have to pay for it. So I seldom used internet during those days. But I got my personal computer in 2007. That's when I started learning more about internet and more about the usage of computer. But in college, I pursued electronics engineering. So I had computer programming, coding, and I got an interest to it. And if you ask about security, I'll say password. That's it, not more than that. But right now, it's so scary because right now, internet is in everyone's palm and we are mostly online. So in cyberspace, cybersecurity is must. I would say it is not a career, it's an individual lifestyle. Like every individual should be cyber safe. So we have Government of Canada have launched cyber.gc.ca. So that website gives you plenty of information to begin with. So that's wherein I got many information. And also when I worked in Durham, we have Center for Cybersecurity, where we collaborate with the real-time and industry partners to come up with solution for their cybersecurity issues, vulnerability problem. And we do have students who help them do the penetration testing. And we do have white hat hacker and gray hat hacker. And so these are certain areas which helped me evolve and learn more about the prospect of cybersecurity. I would say. And it can be self-taught. I didn't go to any college to pursue cybersecurity, but it's a lifestyle I chose. I learned on my personal interest. And also I'm fortunate to teach security courses because I went to university, pursued computer network. So where network security is a primary, theme I chosen. So I do know how cybersecurity is very important, and network security is a subset of it. So it helped me choose the role in cybersecurity medium and to learn passionately. So I would say it can be learned at any time, anywhere, if you wish to, because online medium with a tons of resources available. And also one thing I want to stress on, when you're online, nothing is completely secure. We try to stay safe. So that you have to know what you've heard, what you publish online, it's all has to be, due diligence before you do it. So
Absolutely. And this is an important point for everybody that's listening, because when we go through our presentation is called Let's Have Some Fun Fishing, and let's go fishing, and let's look at some nice ways, interesting ways in which you can make learning about cybersecurity fun. And I think when we talk a little bit more, you'll see about how that fun element can dive into cybersecurity. I know all of you are participating in this competition, but I want you to sort of see how you can have fun by testing out new cybersecurity environments, even though you may not be studying it specifically or plan to, and begin to get more of an understanding of how hardware and software comes together. One thing I've learned working with Rukmini is you should always ask, and if somebody says no, that's fine. No simply stands for move on to the next opportunity. So I think you need to have that spirit in you to ask questions, to see what you can find out more about how certain technologies work from both the hardware and the software end. And we'll dive into that very, very shortly. Rukmini, thank you for taking the time to join all of the wonderful participants today from across Canada, these youngsters who are diving into cybersecurity in many cases for their first time. Speaking about diving into cybersecurity without necessarily a formal background in cybersecurity, without necessarily having taken specific courses, I'm going to ask my colleague and dear friend Sabah to introduce herself. And Sabah, your focus has always been on AI, but you've slowly started getting into the space of cybersecurity. Tell the audience a little bit about your journey and what's got you now leading approximately 3 new projects in the cybersecurity space. Sabah, over to you.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you. Hey, everyone. So as already mentioned, I did my undergrad in electrical and computer engineering, and then I came to Canada to pursue my master's in electrical and computer engineering as well. But when I came here, I had this option to choose some optional courses, and I did one course that was on AI. And that's when I realized, no, I don't want to continue doing electrical electronics. I want to do my specialization in AI because I could see all the possibilities AI has in near future. And that's when I did my specialization. Followed by that, I started working at AI Hub Durham College. And that was my best decision, I would say, because I love AI, working with Ed. I'm loving every bit of working there. Now, as we were working with AI, I did see the opportunities where we can apply AI to cybersecurity. How internet and cyberspace is getting bigger and bigger every day, and how there is need to implement AI there. Because the data we have on daily basis, it's increasing drastically, and we want to make sure we are prepared to manage it, to make sure our security and privacy is taken care of. And that's why I chose to move from and basically work with cybersecurity along with AI.
Absolutely. And again, as Sabah mentioned, many of you might remember last year, some of you rather might remember, we had done a presentation where we were talking to you about what we do at Durham College. To put it very simply, with folks like Rukmini and Sabah, I get the opportunity to work with bright students such as yourself to develop different prototypes and different concepts and different software infused in hardware for different companies. And as you start to engage more with software and hardware, you then begin to think about these situations where what will happen if this data goes in the wrong hands? What will happen if the wrong person remotes into this HMI and takes control over it? And that's when the cybersecurity moment kicks in. if there's one thing that I've learned from Sava, it's that cybersecurity is not an IT specific role. It's everybody's responsibility. So whether while you're participating in CyberTitan, you might be thinking to yourself, you know what, I want to go into a career in legal. I want to go into a career in psychology. Guess what? All of it relates in some shape or fashion to the world of cybersecurity. What motivates somebody to target one system over the other? How legal is it for somebody to work from home on a proprietary system? What are some of the legalities that have to be thought of? There's so much now that goes into cybersecurity, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about how we can make this fun. Speaking about fun, a little bit about how I got introduced into cybersecurity. I got introduced into cybersecurity when I was 12 years old. And this had to do with the first time internet showed up in my community. I used to live in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. And one of the first things that we realized very quickly when we started getting internet in our community was file sharing became a thing. Now, back then, file sharing was typically as much as you could on a Eudora Lite software email management system. You could send an email with a very limited capacity. But what we quickly realized, a lot of phishing campaigns, is that a lot of malicious stuff can also be sent through this. Now, there were a whole bunch of other reasons, including some stuff to do with proxy servers, which I can talk to you about offline, which got me into security. But really what had happened was a friend of mine clicked on a malicious link. Some of you are probably too young to remember Napster and Kazaa. And that's where my interest peaked, because suddenly a brand new spanking machine this large with which you could injure somebody, very, very heavy to take up the 3 floors, going up to the 4th floor where my friend lived, that brand new spanking machine, after 2 days and one click on a bit of a malicious file, started to slow down significantly. Back then, it took your PCs probably, Rukmani Sabha, I think you'd agree, Windows 95, probably took it about 3 minutes to boot up. This one took 10 minutes to boot up. And that's when we realized something's wrong. So I started looking at what the task manager is telling me. I started looking at some forensics, and I started seeing activities and spikes which could not be explained. I don't recall that software being installed. I don't recall running that command. And when you suddenly went into the command prompt, some of you who have played games way back when, I'm dating myself here, but you'd go into the A drive and you'd put your floppy in there and play the game. You could actually do a lot through the command prompt, as you can do now as well. And that very, very quickly showed me something sinister was happening in the machine. And the rest from there was history. Met some good people along the lines, met some greater people at Durham College, and now I find myself at the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation. So, finding yourselves now at CyberTitan, let's talk a little bit about how you can make this exploration into cyber a little bit of fun. And I want you to pay attention to how I'm dividing the conversation between hardware and software. Because often people think that it's software related and something might come in through your email or something might come in through a message sent to you on Facebook. There are other things that are happening as well in the world of hardware, in the world of IoT. Many of you would have heard of the term Internet of Things. Well, at Durham College, we say that the Internet of Things can very quickly become the Internet of Threats if you don't understand how these things actually work. But what do we mean by a cyber attack? What do we mean by somebody stealing something online? So the first thing that I want all of you to do, I don't know if my colleagues here, Rukmini and Sava, can see my slides, but I know the audience can. Oh, they can now. I know my audience can certainly see my slides. I have shifted it to a link that says haveibeenpawned.com. Now, if I want all of you who are watching this to go onto this website, haveibeenpawned.com. And assuming that you can all see my slides, I'm just going to check on Facebook Live if you can all see it. I think you can. So I'm going to repeat the name of the site. I'm going to spell it out for you. haveibeenpawned.com, haveibeenpawned.com. Just to the technical folks, I do have it on presenter mode. I'm not sure why it's not picking up on your side. I also have it on the haveibeenpawned.com slide. Maybe I'm just going to stop sharing and I'll share again, and you can let me know if that works. Give me one moment. Please bear with me, everyone, while I reshare my screen and get the link up there for you to watch. I am operating on 2 different machines, so sometimes things can go wrong, but I think I will have it fixed right now. All right, my screen is being shared again. I will turn to my technical folks and let them know that I have it on presenter mode as well, but I am not sure why it's not showing on presenter mode. We can figure that out later, but everybody can see that screen right now that says haveibeenpawned.com. Now, I'm going to continue the discussion. I want you to go onto that site. Now, this site is a legitimate site, I believe. I was introduced to this site by an individual by the name of Terry Cutler, a well-known ethical hacker. And he told me to look at the site because it's a very interesting way to see how you can begin to analyze whether you've actually experienced something from a cyber perspective. Now, this is created by, I believe, an individual who is ex-Microsoft, so it is a legitimate site, and it does a very, very simple thing. It basically tells you if your email address has been seen in any dump of data sets that could have been stolen. Now, in the previous presentation, you would have heard of stuff like Tor or Onion Router, which if you are accessing, we can have a separate conversation about why you're doing that. But with all of that said, this interface grabs all of those details and tells you if somebody has actually experienced some sort of a hack or some sort of a breach. Now, if you go on that, if I put in my Gmail, I'll see a couple of things that I'm subscribed to, and it'll tell you, hey, your email address has popped up in a breach somewhere. If you go in there, you'll also see maybe your email address has popped up in a breach somewhere. Now, what does that tell you? There are a couple of things that this should tell you. Number one, how exactly is somebody going and finding that information? How exactly does this individual who's ex-Microsoft, if I remember correctly, how is this individual going in and finding out all of this information? Interesting. Number two, there's so much data that's out there that how do you actually go and find out whether a particular email address is popping up on search feeds? Whether that's in the dark web, whether that's wherever else, how do you actually go and do this? And once you actually find the data and you actually locate, let's say, an email address that may have been compromised, what do you actually do with some of these data sets, and how can you make this useful? Now, you might think of the traditional way, and that is, hey, you know what? I popped up on haveibeenpawned.com. My email address, which is ali@ali.com, is popping up, and it's popping up on these sites that may have been breached. I need to go and change my password or remove my data or whatever else have you. That's one thing, but there's so much else that you can do with this stuff. And that's where we have fun with folks like Rukmini and Saba, where we teach students how to visualize data. We teach students how to make this data more accessible. We teach them how to make more analysis from this data to drive more insights. Once you have data and lots of data, there's so much that you can do with it. And that's one of the most fascinating and fun-filled areas when it comes to cybersecurity. I'll take a minute more and talk to you a little bit about what I mean when I talk about data. I'm sure all of you have heard of firms like Kaspersky, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, Kaspersky, for example, or McAfee, these firms that have antivirus solutions for you, etc. Did you know that they have entire departments which are dedicated towards threat intelligence? And what do? For hours and hours and hours on end, they analyze network logs, system logs, logs from multiple areas, and proactively come up with a conclusion of whether an attack is imminent or not. Now imagine this. It's like one of those CSI movies. You're sitting in a room, lots of smart people. Obviously, I'm not in the room, but you've got Rukmini, you've got Saba, all of these smart people in that room, and they're looking at all of these feeds, and they're looking at all of this activity, and they're making determinations. They're building algorithms. They're doing some smart analysis to see whether an attack is about to happen or not. You may wonder, is there so much data out there that they can use? Well, as the previous speaker spoke to you, the dark web is the world's third largest economy. Don't believe me? I highly recommend you read a book or you watch the movie called Gray Day on the life of Eric O'Neill. Eric O'Neill was the individual, and I got to interview him about 2 months ago. Eric O'Neill was the individual who caught America's first cyber spy. And guess what? He had zero background in cybersecurity, but a very good psychology mind. And I can tell you, when I interviewed him, it was more like him interviewing me, because he started to proactively preempt the kind of questions I was going to ask, and then started to twist his responses a little bit. But you know what he was also good at? He was good at data. and he was good at understanding how hardware and software come together. There's so much data to analyze and so much excitement to be had when you're visualizing data and predicting what could happen tomorrow on the internet. So with that, I want to bring Rukmini and Saba back into the conversation. We'll start with Saba and then we'll go with Rukmini. Saba, for many of the kids who are listening right now, they're all brilliant. They're all participating in CyberTitans. All of them are champions in their own right. And if I could, believe me, if I was with you in person, Google it up. DJ Bravo, the song's champion. I would sing and dance to that song for all of you for take the time to be at CyberTitans. But with all of that said, Saba, can you tell the students a little bit about what do we mean by data and how they can get started with working with different data sets? Saba?
Okay, so when we say data, it could be anything. Right now in your classes, you have a list of students, attendance, anything. When you move to bigger spaces like internet, let's take example of Facebook. The information about all the individuals that are present there, their comments, their photos, and everything related to that is data. Now there are different platforms where you can go get these data sets and work on them. One of the platform where you can go is Kaggle.com, Kaggle.com, and there they have predefined data sets, notebooks that are scripts. So you can have there, select which data set you want to work with, and then for each data set there are some notebooks, and you can actually choose. Some of them are for beginners. You can go there, you can open those scripts and start running them, exploring them. Now, that's something you can do when you are really into data or know a bit about coding. And let's say if you are new, there are other resources as well on internet and even on your computer as well. So I'm pretty sure most of you have worked with Excel. So Excel itself can help us build different visualizations. So you have option to make charts. So if you are interested in data, I would suggest start looking into different forms of data sets. It could be anything. It could be scores of your courses, or it could be number of friends, how much they have contributed for a certain thing, or it could be Titanic data, how many people died, how many were alive, how many were men, women, or anything. All these data sets are available online. You can go there, explore it, and then you can actually have a sense how to use it.
Absolutely. And here's the important thing for all of you that are paying attention, Kaggle, go in there, get some data sets, start working with it. Here's one example that I always give my students in the class. If I tell you, this is, what Rukmini, these are the sites Rukmini goes to, this is the site Saba goes to, these are the sites that Ali goes to, you can very quickly draw some inferences. An old man like Ali, 65 plus, goes to websites where he's checking on his health. Everybody else is going on educational and innovation websites. That's 3 people. And you can study that in a couple of minutes, or if you're me, in an hour. However, if I give you 3 million data sets and tell me the pattern that you see within 3 million people, suddenly you got to use some tools from Excel. Suddenly you got to go, what else can I use to digest this data? That's where a lot of magic happens. Thank you, Saba, as always. And for those of you who have more questions, or you can tweet at us at DC Center for Cyber or at the AI Hub, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Rukmini, I'll bring you back into the conversation now. Now, Rukmini, you teach in cybersecurity, and you understand exactly what Saba is talking about when she says you got to start somewhere. When it comes to cybersecurity also, and if let's say there's kids out there that want to study cybersecurity data sets, they want to look at what does like a STIX feed or a taxi feed look like in threat intel. Can you tell them a little bit about what's a good place to start when it comes to trying to look for cybersecurity related data or cybersecurity related intelligence? Rukmini?
Yes, cybersecurity. As I said, it's you should not see it as a education. It's a lifestyle. So it should start from self. We have to protect us and the community. I would say anyone who is interested to protecting the people, community, or securing the future then being cybersecurity professional is one of the platforms. And it's not necessary that they have to pursue a diploma in cybersecurity. They can pursue any degree, because we need mixed, knowledge in this area. But cybersecurity as a practice, if they want to read, I would suggest there are small courses available in Udemy and Coursera and so on. But I would recommend this platform, which is library. I will call it, that's the medium, a library or encyclopedia for cybersecurity. So the library is not only helping with a lot of free courses. If you want to pursue a career as a hacker or penetration tester or computer forensics, they do have a pathway that leads, with hands-on experience. So for a small amount of fee, but some courses are free as well. For the kid who wants to begin the career, I would say Cyber is the right place to start with.
Absolutely. And listen, there's a plethora of resources out there for you. In Durham region, for example, we have a group called Palette Skills. Shout out to them. We have, the Cybersecurity Catalyst in Brampton. There's so many different resources that you can tap into. But what Rukmini has told you is where you can get started on your own and where some of these resources are available at no cost. I'll add one more thing here. It's a mentor of mine once said, the power of showing up is extremely important. As many sessions as you can attend, get yourself into a habit of at least watching 1 or 2 webinars in a week. I'm not going to say watch a webinar a day. I'm sure you have other things to do, but subscribe to different companies that are out there and attend some of their webinars, listen to what they're talking about. And they often drop some free resources that you can study with, that you can play around with. And if you've got any other questions, if you want to share a resource with us, say, hey, is this a good resource? Send it our way and we'll be happy to guide you. Now, another thing that I'm also going to add to this, when it comes to being good with data and cybersecurity, you're not just looking for answers. You're not just looking at something and saying, I see a spike in CPU usage, but it's 1 a.m. in the morning. This means something fishy is going on. Not really. You don't have to look for answers. In cybersecurity, it's not about finding the right answers. It's about asking the right questions. You need to know how to look at data and look at it and say, I wonder what the anomalies here are. I wonder if what I'm seeing relates to what's happening in the office or what's happening in our data center. You really have to be a good all-round thinker. And I'm sure all of you are seeing this in the competition that you're playing right now. Some situations may not have been that straightforward. You've got to think outside of the box, but as we like to say in Durham College, sometimes you got to burn that box. So I hope all of you got a little bit of information from that and went to Have I Been Pawned and realized, whoa, there's a well and treasure trove of information that's out there. What else can I do with all of this? Now, it's not just, and I'm going to go back to my slides, it's not just about software-related stuff and has my email been breached or something like that. It's about much, much more than that. And yay, I've cracked the code. My screen share is working now. Good on me. Another shout out to the team at ICTC and the technical team. You're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm watching on Facebook Live as well because I have a third machine going. So thank you for all the awesome work that you're doing. Let's go on. Now, I talked about data, I talked about software, I talked about all of these other things. But there's also a reality where you can have a lot of fun, and I say fun, but you need to be careful when you do these things. And that's why you need to come to Durham College, because people like Rukmini and Sabha can teach you how to do some of these things safely. And that is in understanding hardware. Now, if you look around me right now, I've got 1 phone, 2 phones, an IoT Bluetooth headset. I've got a couple of machines here. I've got a few things that are all connected to the internet. It's all hardware. And in the world of security, it's not just about how can I crack into a server or how can I crack into somebody's Git repository and get their code. There's also physical things that happen in the world of cybersecurity. Interesting fun fact, I may have spoken about this the last time around when I spoke at CyberTitan, and I mentioned a comment that I think it was maybe Rukmani or Sabha can keep me true to this. I think it was 1.5 years, 2 years ago. I've lost count of time thanks to COVID, but there was a news article that appeared that said one of the newest ways in which cyber criminals were accessing data was with the overnight cleaning staff. The cleaning staff that would come into offices would actually pick up a thumb drive from somewhere, would actually place something on a machine, and then start to gather data from it. hardware and how you protect hardware is an extremely important element when it comes to cybersecurity. And there's so much fun that you can have learning about this. So I've taken a couple of examples over there. Method number one, patching into an IO, patching into an operating system. So for example, I've seen this happen where someone might put a transistor behind, let's say, an elevator. And you press the top button and the down button, and that button on behind the scenes can be connected to something which emits a signal. That signal then can tap into the frequency or can tap into that particular button such that if you press down, that system knows you're pressing down and it can send you back up. Now, I have heard of stories where elevators have malfunctioned, and I have also heard of stories where they've malfunctioned, but not because of a technical reason. Sometimes people can add on devices, can activate third-party applications that can completely mess up the way in which an environment works. Similarly, replacing a component. How many times have I seen this method being applied where somebody will bend a particular device and add something to it, something that can probably read certain information, something that can corrupt information that comes into the SSD or that comes into the hard drive. There are different things that can be done where you can add components to existing hardware. Number three, logic analyzers. How many different IoTs exist that emit data to other interfaces? But now, if I add a particular device to that IoT, let's say it's that smart bulb that's sitting and powering all of the offices, if I emit something in that, I can suddenly now tap into what the light frequencies are, what the light ranges are, when are they on, when are they shut off. And I can use all of that data to cause quite a bit of harm. I'll give you one example. Some time ago, I read about a case where somebody had hacked into, through a particular means, including some hardware adulteration, someone hacked into a smart fridge where they were basically looking for how many times the fridge would open and how many times it would close. If you're me, always hungry, 24/7. But if you're somebody else who's a little less like me, you're going to get patterns of when the person's at home. And you can use that to determine when is a good time to actually break into that house. There's so much that happens with add-ons on hardware. If I ever get the chance to talk to you about skimming when it comes to credit cards, ever wondered why we switched from magnetic stripes to the chip card? When it comes to add-ons that are put on peripheral endpoints, like things that scan your cards or things that receive your payments. One very common form of attack has been at ATM machines. When you put your card in, there's that little ingestion device. Some people add on something to that, mold it to fit there, and then start to skim details from your credit card. So much happens, and so much is going on with how we converse with IoT devices. There's also something there called hexdump, which is basically no similar. Many of you would have heard of stuff like juice jacking. Many of you would have heard of people that talk about your flash drives and how you should lock them and how you should actually allow another port to tap into your machine. All of these different devices that store and process information all can deliver memory dumps. And all of that can be stolen if you have a faulty or an adulterator or a hacked USB port, for example. It can happen. That's why many people will tell you, don't plug in your phone to a public system where you can charge it. Don't use somebody else's machine or somebody else's wire to tap into your phone and to give it juice. Use your own devices. All of this has to do with how hardware is now shifting and how through hardware, people are getting ubiquitous access to data. Truly, truly fascinating to see where things are going. And I highly recommend you look at some of these things, replacing components, patching, hex dumps, so on and so forth. A good example of all of this is very recently, some of you in Florida actually would know that in February, the water system was hacked. And how was this hacked? It was hacked through somebody, as per what the reports say. Many people are working remotely. And as you know, there's stuff like TeamViewer, Join.me, many ways in which you can remote desktop into a machine. Turns out, at least if that's what I heard correctly, a whole bunch of people who were using that particular software to remote into the operating system for the water plant were all using the same password. Better yet, they were all using the same administrator password, which came out of the box. Sometimes, when you buy a product, it has a standard password that you need to change. Nobody changed it. Now, if that is true or not, regardless, the fact that somebody was able, through an HMI interface, to log into the water system and alternate the chemical balances within the water tells you that a cybersecurity attack is not just something that it'll take your email address or it'll take your credit card information. It can corrupt your hardware devices. And when it corrupts your hardware devices, it can actually go in there and have ramifications that include life and death. The biggest concern about this remote hacker that got into the system was that they could have manipulated the water system, turning it poisonous. And you can imagine how many people would have been devastated if something like that happened. There's so much going on in the world of cyber. That's what makes it truly, truly interesting for you to study. Now, I won't go too much into this because I just wanted to emphasize upon you how many different kind of attacks are happening at the same time, and how much the skills gap is growing, and how much we need people who are well-rounded in different understandings, politics, economics, social issues, health, finance in the world of cybersecurity. So with that, I'm going to ask, before I go into the last section of the presentation, I'm going to go to Rukmini and then to Saba, because I have a quick question for them. Is that, Rukmini and Saba hire different students, they recruit students as well. Rukmini, what are some of the skill sets? Besides the fact that a student could say, hey, I know how to run a Metasploit framework, right? What are some of the other skills that you look for, those soft skills that you look for in students to see if they're good and see if they're capable to do something great in cybersecurity? Rukmini?
The passion for technology is the first thing, and also the passion for protecting not just the computers around the community, because being in cybersecurity is like protecting the people, protecting the community. You're not just thinking about protecting just yourself, everyone. So I would say hacking, we have different types of hacking. One is white hat hacking, where you learn to hack a system, check the vulnerability, and you can report and get rewarded. And I would recommend students who want to pursue, something, they should be rewarded. So there are a number of bug bounty programs available, and they can look into it. I would say HackerOne, Synact, those are some of the platform, the bigger bug bounty platform, and they can go ahead and learn for the work. They get rewarded as well. So when you get rewarded, the interest multiplies and it helps them be successful in the field as well. And you don't have to have a degree to do that. You have to have the required skills and technology to do that. So they can learn. And also, as I mentioned, cybergc.ca is a Canadian government website. It is for Canadian Center for Cybersecurity. They have a number of educational material, and they have something tied up to it, cyber safe. So how to get cyber safe. So, anyone here, you can learn about it. You can tell your parents, grandparents who are not tech savvy to learn about it, to basically protect themselves. So these are the basic skills they need. So they should have the interest, and then they can move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that passion for technology, and that's why I have this slide on hardware. Before we go on, Saba, very quickly, just in a minute, what are some of those skill sets you look for in students, and what do you think they should be focusing on in terms of future trends? Saba?
Okay, so just adding to what Rukmini said, another thing I look into students is curiosity. So if you want to know about it, if you're interested in cybersecurity and AI, everything is a click away. But first, you need to know why exactly you need to learn about cybersecurity. So the kids from age 8 to 18, the stat says that they spend about 6 to 7 hours on internet. That's exactly the same amount of time you spend sleeping. So when you're spending this much time on internet, and with the growing cyberspace, we know how things are increasing. And by things, I mean, so in real world, we have different crimes. In internet and cyberspace, we have cyber crimes. It could be anything. Some examples are cyberbullying and threat, identity theft, and many more. So while we are internet, we are dealing with all sort of things, and we need to be sure that we know how to take care of ourselves, prevent it, and prevent our loved ones from this. Now, one more thing. Right now, when we speak of cybersecurity, along with cybersecurity, we are mentioning AI again and again. Why is that so? As I discussed earlier as well, the data is increasing. I mentioned the Facebook example. So even only on Facebook, it's 1.8 billion active users daily. Now, one thing you might have noticed on Facebook, we do have these blurred images at times. So they are actually blurred using the software. How is it happening? So at the back end, AI basically, they feed training images to the AI. They tell the AI models that, okay, these are some violent images. These are not. Now what happens when something similar comes on internet, any social media, the software actually labels it as violent. So this is one of the example, and this is how we can how we learn how to save ourselves from such attacks.
Absolutely. And I couldn't emphasize this more. Remember, I talked about this idea of I give you 3 data points, but then I give you 3 million data points. How are you going to study it? And let's say I give you 3 million data points per second. How are you going to analyze that? That's when you need smart people like Saba and Rukmani to work with you and to look at different aspects of computing, different aspects of how you can crunch this data in real time and do predictive analytics. There are companies like Darktrace, ExtraHop, SentinelOne, all of these amazing companies, VMware, Carbon Black, they're all doing amazing things when it comes to automated intelligence. And I highly, highly recommend that you think closely about that marriage between data intelligence and cybersecurity. I've got another 4 minutes, but I just want to race through a couple of things for you. Number one is if you want to start having fun with doing some cybersecurity, the first thing I'm going to tell you, understand the generic makeup of any computing system. In most cases, you're going to have memory, you're going to have storage, you're going to have a processor, okay? You might have a GPU, you might have a couple of input valves, so for example, input ports rather. Understand the generic makeup of a machine. Know what goes into it. Ask yourself, and I'm not going to answer it for you, but ask yourself, do you know the difference between RAM and actual storage? Do you know how RAM and SSD, for example, how those oscillate between one another? Do you actually understand how the computer draws on data? What makes it increase its speed? What makes it decrease its speed? Do you actually know how those functions operate? That's a very good start. And you know what? One of the best practices, and I thank my dad and my mom for letting me do this, is they bought me machines that I could actually break. If somebody has a machine, a discarded laptop that they don't want to use, well, go to an expert and make sure it's safe to use it, but then open it up. Look at what goes into it. See if you fix it and retrieve it. What's going to happen with that machine? A very, very good start. Or better yet, buy yourself a Raspberry Pi. Start connecting it. Start loading up some software. See how it responds. See how it attracts, how it works in an IoT environment. There are lots of maker spaces as well that are out there. Highly recommend you look at those. There are different types of attacks. I will obviously share these slides with you. Try and understand for yourself, what do we mean by this? So when we say cross-site scripting versus zero-day, what's the difference there? What do we mean by a zero-day attack that only a malicious actor knew about and nobody else did? How does patching come into play? For example, the recent attack of the Colonial Pipeline, what exactly did we mean by a ransomware campaign? It came through a phishing environment, but what else were these individuals phishing for? How else could they have launched this kind of attack? So when I said this idea of let's go phishing, yeah, go phishing into this pond of different hardware that exists, different software that exists, different mental mindsets that exist, and see what you come up with. There is a lot of fun to be had in the world of cybersecurity training, and here's a screenshot from a game that I play every Wednesday night, which is tomorrow night. And this game is called Esports Cyber. It's in its beta stages right now. And you know what we do? We assign players different characters, and on a weekly basis, we put ourselves in different scenarios. This week, for example, I'm going to be in a scenario where we were actually a hacking group. We thought we were ethical hackers. We hacked into a library system and brought their site down. Somehow somebody found out it was us. Now we're in this environment where we're going to meet with the library IT folks and we're going to explain what we did. And we do this in a tabletop environment where we roll a dice for different superpowers, and based on where our superpowers land, we've got to figure out what the best response is going to be. There's a judge, there's a scoring system. There are environments like esports cyber. There are environments with VR environments for training in cybersecurity that are really, really fascinating. And I encourage all of you to make connections, talk to people, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, and we'll be happy to share more and more of these resources. Also, if you want to play on esports cyber, shoot me a note on Twitter, connect with me, direct message me, and I'll make sure you get to try out in the beta tester community that we're all a part of. And last but not the least, if you ever want to do something in cybersecurity, Durham College is the place to be. Not only do we do events, we've done Global Cyber Olympics, we've done CPTC, we are now hosting an Enable AI Summit. We've worked with close to 65 plus companies in a variety of environments, building prototypes for them. Saba right now is leading 3 projects with a company called Risk, a company called Parabellix, and very shortly with a company called ThreatIQ. And very shortly, Rukmani and myself and a bunch of others are actually going to be dabbling into the world of quantum computing. And what do we mean by making an environment quantum safe? So there's a lot of exciting things happening at Durham College. If you have any questions, please follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. You'll also find details for Rukmani and Saba there. My name is Ali, but before I sign off, I just want to say thank you to Rukmani. Thank you for Saba for everything that you did today. And as I mentioned before, if somebody says that, you know what, you're failing at this, failing is fine. To fail, as my mother was told me once, is your first attempt in learning. And that's the philosophy with which you need to go into the world of cybersecurity. With that, I'm going to pass it over to the team at ICTC to make some closing remarks. Team at ICTC, over to you.
Anna, you're muted again.
Hi. Thank you so much to all of you at Durham College for your support of CyberTitan, and as well for a very fascinating talk that really took us through your career journeys a little bit, as well as what's going on at Durham, what's going on in the world of cyber, AI, Internet of Things. A lot to think about, and I know that I personally learned a lot from your presentation. There was a lot of wonderful resources and links that you mentioned, so I am going to give you a little bit of homework. If you could put those all in one place, I know that the youth listening in today would probably love to have that information. If some of them weren't trying to scribble it really quickly, we can put that together in a package and send it along for them. So Ali, if you could just send that over to Sheena, that would be great, and she'll make sure that it gets to all the students and coaches.
Super.
Wonderful. Thank you once again. And with that, we are ready to take a break. We will be coming back at 2:30 sharp with Dr. Tom Keenan. Stay tuned, always very entertaining. So again, that will give you just a little bit over 15 minutes. Let's begin again at exactly 2:30. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Rukmani and Saba. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you all.
Amazing.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody had a nice stretch break. It's a lot of information to take in. And now we are back with Dr. Tom Keenan. Tom is both a seasoned IT professional and a popular professor at the University of Calgary. He taught Canada's first computer security course in 1977 and was involved in the creation of the country's first computer crime laws. A frequent guest on radio and TV, Tom has served as an expert witness in civil and criminal cases and is known for his ability to demystify complex subjects and tease out the news. Welcome, Dr. Tom Keenan.
Thank you very much. Hello from sunny Calgary, Alberta. Can you guys hear me okay? Are you hearing me? Hello, I'm waiting for confirmation that you can actually hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
You can hear me, great. Well, wonderful, and thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Sheena and Diana and all the staff for putting this together. Thanks to the sponsors. We're gonna have some fun here today. You may wonder why I'm wearing this lab coat. And first of all, some of you heard a speech like this just about a year ago. Don't worry, some will be the same, some will be different. But this lab coat is the same one, and I bring it out once a year to show you folks a very important principle, which I'm going to now bring up my screen and share my entire screen, complete with audio, because we're going to have some singing and dancing as we do this. And I'm going to try to share my entire screen with you right now. Okay, and with any luck, and luck is always a factor in technology, you will be able to see a PowerPoint presentation that I prepared especially for you. Would someone tell me if you see the PowerPoint, please?
Yes.
Well, yes, yep. Okay, and now you see it full screen, okay?
Yep, it's perfect.
Great, and the show is going to begin. So I am Tom Keenan. I am the board chair of the ICTC Council, and I'm very proud that we're involved with this event. And I want to congratulate you all. Just being here shows you're very, very intelligent. And I just read some of the news about the new executive order from the White House about cybersecurity. So we're all in the right business. Now, why the lab coat? Well, at the beginning of COVID, was in a grocery store. I'm telling you this story because there's a point to it. And there was a sign that said, medical personnel and first responders move to the front of the line. And I thought, I could kind of fake this. I've got a lab coat at home. And now I remembered I had something else, which is this credential. Now, I found this while I was cleaning out my basement about a year ago. And sure enough, it claims that I'm a doctor at the Calgary General Hospital. Now, there's no fraud possible here because that hospital was demolished quite a few years ago. I had no idea why I had this thing with my photo on or why it had a name that doesn't belong to me till I remembered I'm an actor and I acted in a movie that was shot in that hospital. And somebody said, hey, that doctor over there doesn't have an ID tag on. So they marched me down to Human Resources and they made me this tag, which conveniently I never returned to them. I kept it as a souvenir. Why do I tell you this? Because armed with my lab coat, armed with this tag, I bet I could have gone to the front of the line. Because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. For 25 years, I ran the Shad Valley program with young people about the age of the competitors here. And I finally found an image to remind you of that. You can reproduce. Just because you can reproduce doesn't mean that you should. You can commit all kinds of fraud. With the technology knowledge that you folks have, probably things we can't even think about. The moral of the story, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Now, having said that, computer security has been real good to me. I came to Alberta like 100 years ago, actually 1972. I was a tour guide leading a bike trip. I won't make you wonder which one is me. It's the one with the big red beard on the right. And I loved Alberta so much that I'd stayed here. I got a job at the Computer Services Department. Because I was the new guy, they had a problem. Somebody was going around the entire campus posting printouts. For those who don't know what printouts look like, that's a printout. And they would go around the campus putting up all these lists of people's account numbers and passwords. This was what we would now call a cybersecurity problem. In 1972, that word barely existed. And because I was the new guy, I got stuck with the problem. And I'm going to tell you that I solved it. I learned everything there was about cybersecurity. It took about 2 days. There wasn't much back then. And I found out that there was a memory residue problem. The big mainframe computer he had was not clearing out the memory in between successive users. And one clever person, he turned out to be the son of a dean who had too much time on his hands. This young fellow was going in there, requesting blocks of memory and looking, because he knew where to look, to see if any passwords were left over. So I plugged it. I became slightly famous because of that, because I solved a big problem. And then I did one more thing. I taught Canada's first computer security course on October 14, 1977 in Edmonton. And how do I know that? Well, nobody's ever shown me they'd taught one before that. And every year, there's a science called actuarial science. The number of people who can challenge me on this lane gets smaller and smaller. So I'm willing to bet I was the first guy teaching computer security. I now go to many computer security conferences. I've spoken at DEF CON. I say I go to these so you don't have to, but of course, they're great fun. When we get back to the world where you can actually go in person to conferences, this is what DEF CON looks like. You're not allowed. It's the elite hacker conference, 30,000 hackers from all over the world. You're not allowed to take pictures of people's faces, but you can take pictures of their haircuts. So I've spoken at all of these. I love them. I have a great time at them, and you should too. I'm going to talk a bit about image fakery. So I'll start with something that we all know. You watch television and you see a background. Now I use this one because I'm pretty fond of it. It's actually real. I am in Ottawa and the Parliament building is out the window in back of me. That's the CTV bureau opposite the Parliament buildings. That's one of the few times when you'll actually see a real background on television. Most of the time we fake it. So here I am in an ABC News studio in New York City, and sure enough, they've got me up in front of the Empire State Building. Now, that's kind of fun, and I thought I used this slide actually to test facial recognition programs, because there are 2 images of my own face there, one the actual one and one the one from the TV monitor, and I ran a program called Beta Face on my own face there to see how it analyzes me, and it says, that I don't have a 5 o'clock shadow. It guesses I'm 53 years old, which is very kind of it. I'm not attractive. Okay. I have bags under my eyes and I'm going bald. So this is actually a pretty simple face analysis program. I get my students to work on this and they come up with ones that can even detect your emotion or maybe your sexual orientation or your political views. So your face reveals a lot about you. Now, talking about images, this is a real image. It's somewhere I've actually been going out to a lot this year. It's a ski area, Sunshine Village. That's a double black diamond one called Delirium Dive. With any luck, I might get out there tomorrow. And I show you that because one of my earliest faked images from 1995 was a poster or an ad in which somebody photoshopped in, I suppose, a nice mountain in the background. I tried to figure out how they did this, and I looked up when Photoshop was created before most of you were born in 1987. And this led me to actually ask the New York Times photo editor if he could detect fakery in photos. And he said, they used to take a razor blade and cut together 2 negatives and make a print from them. That I can detect. Once it's been through a computer, I can't. And the other point is that we have so many tools now. InDesign, GIMP, Adobe Photoshop, Pixel, all kinds of tools that anybody can get and use. So it's really easy to fake things. Furthermore, it turns out that images really attract people. So a little bit of a tip if you're on Twitter, tweets with images are 34% more likely to be retweeted. That's my Twitter handle, @DrFuture, and you'll notice if you take a look at it, I always try to have an image. So talking about image fakery, this would be the National Geographic Photo of the Year, but of course it's faked. That guy is not about to be eaten by a shark. And sometimes faking a photo is very simple. So these look like a very brave or very foolish couple posing, it looks like really true love there until you see where they actually are. So they're about 1.5 meters, 2 meters above the ground. There's really no danger. This is a place down in Brazil. It's so popular that people actually line up at that stupid rock to take photos. There's even an official photographer at the rock. So sometimes it's just a matter of perspective. You'll notice this too if you look at hotel ads. They use a fisheye lens to shoot the swimming pool. So you think, wow, that's a big pool. And you go there, and in fact, it's like a little kiddie pool. Photos can be used to help people tell lies. The photos themselves might not lie. You may remember the case where some Hollywood stars tried to fake credentials for their kids to get them into elite colleges. So this is one particular one. I won't dignify her by saying her name. I think she went to jail, and her lovely daughters. And she tried to pretend that they were on the rowing team or something else. Now, I'm a pretty good internet detective, but even I could not figure out where to find photos that she submitted. So I found some that were like those. Here's one possibility for one of her daughters. Maybe she excels at shot put, or maybe is capable of taking on a heavyweight champion of the world. So obviously these are ridiculous, but they just give you the idea that photos can be used. And in fact, they can be used in anger and in politics. So this is a young lady who was involved in the protest after the school shooting in Florida. And you'll notice that someone has taken her image and carefully changed it. So she's tearing up the Declaration of Independence, the US Constitution, whatever she's got in her hand there, to make a political statement. So photos can actually be manipulated to do terrible things. And we're all becoming skeptical about photos. So for example, Toshiba actually ran an ad campaign about a comfortable chair in space. People looked at this and they said, that's Photoshop. You didn't send a chair up there. So they actually had to go and post another video proving that they actually did launch a chair to the edge of space tied to a balloon. One of the most interesting things, of course, with fakery is deep fakes. And I think this is probably the world's most famous deep fake video. In case you're not aware, it consists of taking someone like former President Obama and making them say things that they didn't say. He's a particularly good target, as would be Donald Trump and many other people, because there are so many photos. Because you need photos of his mouth open, his mouth closed, him saying certain words, and then there's AI programs that can stitch them together. So I'm going to show you the result of that, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the sound as well as see the video.
President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. That's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
Now, while I've just got this slide up here, would somebody give me confirmation verbally, I guess, because I can't see the chat window. Did you hear the audio on that?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. That makes my day. So deepfake technology, takes a lot of computing power, although I've got a buddy who works for Cisco. He said, Tom, if you want to make a deep fake, I've got enough computing power in my basement, we can do it. But guess what? It's going to come to everybody. So one of my favorite things that happened recently is Procter & Gamble, who make the Charmin toilet paper, decided they do all kinds of clever things. So for example, they have an app you can put on your phone called Sit or Squat. And if you do that, you can find the nearest publicly accessible toilet, and you can even rate it as to how clean it is. But now they've outdone themselves with the BRB, Be Right Back bot. It's a way to deal with the real problem. And the real problem is we're doing everything online. We're doing all these Zoom meetings. What if nature calls? So I want to show you their solution to that.
Looks like we're going to have to find a long-term solution.
Rebecca, your camera's on. Oh, no. Your camera's on. This is actually happening. Camera.
Rebecca.
What happens when you're in the middle of a call and need to conduct your business? Here at Charmin, we're obsessed with helping you enjoy the go. But with all the video calls we're doing this year, that's gotten tougher than ever. Luckily, our old friend Science can help. Introducing BRB Bot from Charmin. It creates a digital doppelganger to stand in for you on video calls when you need to enjoy the go. BRB Bot features a range of human reactions, such as laughing at your boss's terrible jokes, looking thoughtfully into the distance, reacting to being told you're working all weekend.
Great. No plans.
And much more.
Rebecca, what were last quarter's numbers again?
I look forward to running it up the flagpole and finding synergistic solutions.
Oh, okay.
We still have a few bugs to work out. BRB Bot, just the latest way Charmin is innovating how you enjoy the go.
I'd love to send you off to use that, except Procter & Gamble isn't releasing it. I have a hunch they think there might be legal or social problems if that technology got out there. But I'll make you a little bet, bet you $1, and that's my betting limit, that somebody's going to make something just like it and release it out there publicly. So because you're all pretty smart, maybe you'll be the ones to do that. Who knows? Again, the way that thing works is you program it in advance with certain expressions. So happy, sad, scratching your head, looking bored, and then it detects using AI which one of those to insert, and it does it pretty seamlessly. Where can this all go? Well, this is my friend Sophia. You may have heard of her. She's a totally artificial person. She carries on actually really intelligent conversations. She's a better conversationalist than a number of people I've met in real life, actually. I spoke with her at the RSA conference in Singapore a couple of years ago, and we may see totally fake people. You may see people walking down the street, and they may be actually constructed. Her face is made of frubber, which is a flexible rubber. So Sophia might be coming. On a more immediate note, I want to teach you some things that you shouldn't do. So for example, for a long time, doesn't work anymore, if you altered your Air Canada boarding pass, which by the way, you can print out, and I said Air Canada, but of course this is really Air Canada. I took off part of the name there. The code BBRG used to mean you got a free drink. And if you showed your boarding pass, the flight attendant between Calgary and Edmonton would probably hand you that bottle of wine. Now, a friend of mine is vice president of Air Canada, and I said, "Would this work anymore?" He said, "Oh, no. We automated the whole beverage cart thing so that now what happens is that they have an iPad so they can look down and they can see if you're entitled to a drink. So I can show you this. It's sort of my ethical principle because, hey, it's okay. You can't do this." Likewise, boarding passes used to be special. This is a really old one from Toronto to Pittsburgh on this special paper, but now we can print them out anywhere. Here's another thing you shouldn't do. There's something called Express Expense that allows you to fake receipts. So I literally bought 2 beers at the Jasper Park Lodge, one for a friend and one for myself, with tip $22. I was speaking to a conference of judges. I know darn well they don't pay for alcohol, so I didn't submit it. But if I had wanted to fake it, I could have used this to turn it into a receipt for a ham sandwich, $20.95 plus GST. It even made up the name of a server. Again, this can be done, but you should not do this. I want to take it into COVID-19 now because one of the funnier stories from February 2021, the COVID grannies. They're a little hard to see, but there are 2 women in their 30s in there who were dressed up like little old ladies, gray wigs, bathrobes, all that, because they wanted to get a COVID vaccine. And sure enough, they did manage to get the first dose. They were stopped by police when they went for their second dose and told, "You're trespassing, get out of here. You're lucky we don't arrest you." So that's physical world fakery. Then there's also this whole idea of vaccine passports. The world hasn't figured out if we're going to need one. I'm willing to bet, again, betting limit $1 Canadian, that we're going to have vaccine passports of some sort. So I looked at my own. It's not really a vaccine passport, but I went on the Alberta government's website, and sure enough, it says on October 26th, I get the flu vaccine. Good idea. And then I've had 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, the Pfizer one, actually. So this is kind of an official record. I didn't print out my name and healthcare number, but I could have. And this could serve as a vaccine passport. Guess what? If this becomes a vaccine passport, people may find ways to spoof it. Like if you're supposed to show it on your phone, any one of you probably is smart enough to change that image on the phone and to make it look like you've been vaccinated. Don't do it. That's the point. There were criminals at the Charles de Gaulle airport selling fake COVID test results, and they're in jail, and with good reason. Okay, this is a critical business issue because as we go paperless, I won't go into all the details here, but as we go paperless, the risks for tampering are even more because you can change things online quite effectively. Lowe's had a problem where some bad guys printed out $50 coupons for Mother's Day back in 2017, and sure enough, they were flooded with these bogus coupons. Likewise, insurance companies are now getting fake photos. Oh, my basement flooded. So rather than send out an insurance adjuster, what do? They say, send us photos. So people are faking the photos. And in fact, one guy was caught using old photos of a truck that had already been hit or something like that. So it can kind of work both ways. What are we going to do about this? I'm going to give you 4 ways to fight fakery. The first is technical. So I know a lot of people who will look at a deepfake video and try to find things like, is the carotid artery pulsing properly? Is the breath pattern right? Microsoft actually has a tool, I'll show it to you in a minute, to authenticate images by detecting the boundary of the deepfake and things around it that might not be detectable by the human eye. Other ways to find out if something is real: where did you get it from? What's the source? Ask others, that would be crowdsourcing, and maybe a kind of blockchain registry. So here's the Microsoft tool, and it brings up an interesting concept. This is it running on a video, and where you see the red box, it has a low confidence that the image is authentic. In other words, this has been deep faked, and through its technological analysis, it's able to find that. And it will give you kind of a percentage confidence. And that's what we're going to see a lot of. Not from AI, it doesn't always say yes or no. It says, with 93% confidence, I think you are such and such. As for the source, this is something you've probably never seen, but I used to cover the United States State Department. And rather than all of us holding our microphones up to the Secretary of State, we had a thing like this to get an official trusted feed of the Secretary of State's words. So this is called a breakout box. We can have the same type of thing digitally, a good digital feed, and we know where it comes from. We can also have what we call out-of-band validation. This, and I'm not responsible for the placement of the blue check, Justin Bieber is, but anyway, this at one point was Bieber's Facebook page, and sure enough, that little blue check is meaningful. It means that this is his real page, and that has been done by an exchange of documents between his agent and lawyers and Facebook. So all the other fake Justin Bieber sites out there have to bow down to this one because it's got the blue check mark. Then there's crowdsourcing reliability. You can read up on this guy, T. Mills Kelly. He's a kind of unethical professor because he makes his students create hoaxes on the internet. So one of them that's illustrated here is faking that somebody opened a trunk in New York City and found her grandfather's papers, and grandpa was a serial killer. And it was all, by making fake yellow clippings. And this one was debunked in 22 minutes on Reddit. So we're getting pretty good at catching fakes. Then there's a way, it gets a little technical, but we could take something, a checksum, if you know what that is, of a photo or a video, register it on a blockchain like Bitcoin, and I've come up with a technique for doing that, and then you'd be able to prove which image came first. So in some famous cases like doctored video of CNN reporters and stuff, this would be a way to sort that out, or at least detect that there was tampering. I hope I've convinced you of a few things, and I'm going to have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions at the end of this. Fakery and detecting fakery is a heck of a lot of fun. It's one of the most interesting things I've ever worked on. It's not fun if you're the victim of the fraud, though, so beware. You're all smart enough to fake a receipt, alter a photo, tweak a boarding pass. The tools are out there. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. I always close with this image. It's pre-internet. Free to good home. Beautiful 6-month-old male kitten. Friendly, playful, affectionate. Or handsome 32-year-old husband. Funny, good job. Doesn't like cats. Says he goes or the cat goes. Call Jennifer. Call both and decide which you'd like. Why do I show you this? One message. You're always going to make choices. When you look at an image, do I believe it? When you put up an image, did I mess with it? Should I put that image up there? everything you do with technology is going to be a choice, and these choices are not going away. In fact, they're going to be there forever. If we don't have time to answer your questions, and I know that this is a tight timeline, the very last line here is my Twitter handle, @DrFuture. I will make a point of watching that. And if you guys want to post questions, just put it up there and I will do my best to answer it. And I promise to be done at 12:55. It's 12:55. Sheena, take it away or tell me what to do, please.
Hi, great. Thank you very much. Are we ready for our next speaker, or did any questions come in from our participants?
No, we don't have any questions, but I can confirm you are being watched. So
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Tom Keenan, for that fabulous talk. And I'm sure we'll pass on your Twitter handle as well as part of the notes that go out to everybody. So feel free to either ask any questions that pop into your mind, either through Sheena or directly to Dr. Keenan through his.
Oh, quick plug. I have a book. It's called Techno Creep: The Surrender of Privacy and the Capitalization of Intimacy. Please buy it. It's on Amazon. It's even on Walmart.com. But even better, if you speak Spanish, it's now come out as Tecno Siniestro. So if you want to brush up on your Spanish, get that. Same book, just different language. Thanks again for having me.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we will keep things moving right along then. Next up, we have a panel of speakers from Field Effect, and we will start up with a video that they have in store for us. And I'm sure that video is coming. There you are. Great, thank you. And Field Effect is a new partner of ICTC this year, powering our Cyber Days and also our CyberTitan platform. Today we have a panel joining us. First we have Elena Lapina, who is a Threat and Risk Intelligence Lead at Field Effect. Her previous experience includes various intelligence functions in the financial sector and the communication security establishment. We also have with us today Olivia Burrell. She's a computer science student at the University of Ottawa, and recently she had the opportunity to spend a co-op term at Field Effect. And next is Iona Buchanan. She's a data scientist that has been working at Field Effect for 2 years. Iona has a passion for math and computer science and uses math, data analytics, and machine learning to detect and prevent cyber threats. Last but not least, we have Alyssa Parenteau as a senior security analyst at Field Effect, where she helps companies assess their cybersecurity risks and remediate incidents. Alyssa has been in the field for over 20 years and spent most of that time at the communication security establishment, helping to protect Canada and its critical infrastructure. Welcome.
Hi, Diana, thank you. My name is Elena, and I'm a security and risk intelligence lead at Field Effect Software, as Diana mentioned. Our company is headquartered in Ottawa and was founded in 2016 by cybersecurity veterans who helped shape Canada's cybersecurity strategy and other national level cybersecurity policies. We're only a few years in the making, but thanks to a very diverse and passionate group of people working here, we have now expanded into a global cybersecurity company with 24/7 operations, providing monitoring and protection, incident response, security training, compliance, and consulting products and services, with offices in Canada, the UK, Australia, and employees working remotely throughout the globe. We have a dynamic mix of people of all ages, genders, cultural, and career backgrounds. And this diversity is what makes our workplace a challenging and exciting environment, and ultimately contributes to our success as a company. These people work in various streams that all play a vital part in what we produce and offer. This includes incident response, and digital forensics, cybersecurity and tradecraft analysts, system administrators, training authors, infrastructure and system support staff, security researchers, sales engineers, product designers, engineering and operations support, developers, marketing and PR specialists, administrators, copywriters, and executives. And today, this kind of diversity is something that you'll see all throughout the cybersecurity industry. But this was not always the case. Even about a decade ago, an image of a lone white male in a hoodie was something that people would think of when one said the word hacker. And if you told somebody you worked in cybersecurity, they would immediately assume that you were a programmer. Today, technology changes at the speed of light. And these developments bring many challenges with it, including the fact that hacking has now developed into an organized economy with its own supply channels, vendors, operators, markets, and a wide variety of people involved with various motivations. So there is a present need to counter these developments with a well-rounded response by looking at all of the factors that make up cybersecurity. It's no longer just about coding. It involves complex analysis of computer code, human behavior, technology, data, geopolitics, linguistics, law, and much more. And this is what makes this field so exciting. You can do anything you're good at working in cybersecurity and make valuable contributions. And my own career path is a primary example of that. Prior to joining Field Effect, I worked in various intelligence roles in the Canadian financial sector and the communications security establishment. And I can't really say that my cybersecurity career started at a certain point in time. I think everything I've done since I was a child played a role in what I do today. So I grew up in Soviet Union and later Russia, and I always enjoyed writing. And I was good at languages, history, and other social sciences. I was always terrible at math. So after high school, I went to study linguistics. But my studies were interrupted when my family had to leave Russia, and so I came to Canada in 1998. And here was my first encounter with the internet. And I was so fascinated with all of the possibilities associated with the internet that I thought I'd go study computer science. And my mom's reaction was, "But you're bad at math, and it's not a woman's profession." So I listened, gave up on that idea, and went to study international relations and corporate communications. I worked in advertising after university and then had a baby. And while I was at home with my newborn son, I came up with a freelance business idea. I picked up some basic programming skills in HTML and CSS and went on to design our websites for small businesses. And a few times the websites I designed and maintained got hacked. So I would then track down the IPs of these hackers and report them to the internet service providers. And I guess this is the closest to cybersecurity I got until I was 30. Later, I was looking for a stable full-time job in government, and in 2012, I was hired as an intelligence analyst at CSC. I worked in various areas of CSC for 6 years and eventually settled on their cybercrime team. And during my years there, I worked with federal agencies around the world on helping build defenses against cybercriminal actors, marketplaces, tools, and cybercriminal services. And my specialty was financially motivated cybercrime. So later I was hired by Canadian Bank to help them counter such crimes. So when I joined Field Effect in September 2020, I was tasked with starting a program to assist their internal teams, our clients and partners with their intelligence and risk assessment needs. My daily work involves a lot of writing and research, and I look at all of the aspects of a cyber threat, be it a flaw in technology that needs to be patched, geopolitical event that could cause a cyber attack, new malware tools and campaigns, new security research, and many more aspects that help our teams improve their defenses and help keep our clients and partners secure. And that is in a nutshell what I do. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that this is a great initiative, and all of you here already have every trait that's required in cybersecurity. Being curious, thinking outside of the box, and being willing to learn and accept the challenges. And it's ultimately these traits and not the choice of your degree that will determine your future. So choose something you do well and focus on that, as opposed to chasing something that's popular or makes more money. Because the nature of this work requires constant active engagement and continuous learning and seeking of new ways to tackle the security challenges. And so passion is really important in cybersecurity. And at Field Effect, we hire people for their technical skills as much as for having passion for what they do. Also, I have, as Diana mentioned, I have 3 of my colleagues here today to talk about their experience in cybersecurity. And Olivia recently completed an internship with us and could tell you about her career path. Olivia?
Awesome, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Olivia, as mentioned, and I'm a university student at the University of Ottawa. I'm currently in my 3rd year studying computer science, and recently, as mentioned, I completed a co-op term at Field Effect. But I'll get to that a little bit later. First, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got into the tech world, and maybe you'll resonate with some of it. So, in the later years of elementary school and early high school, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to go into STEM. STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math, right? So I knew I liked my math courses, I knew I liked my science courses, but I didn't really know what I could do with them or what kind of the future holds for me. That wasn't until grade 11 where things kind of started to change and I was put onto the path that I'm on right now as a computer science student. So my older sister actually recommended that I take computer science as an elective in grade 11. Now, trust me when I say that up to this point, I had no idea what computer science was. I didn't know what coding was or programming. I wasn't someone who was considered tech savvy in any sort of way. And I couldn't even really imagine what people do in a computer science class. Like I wouldn't be able to tell you anything before I took this course. And on top of all that, none of my female friends talked about computer science or even considered the tech industry as a career that they wanted to pursue. So I was really sort of on my own there, and I was putting myself out there into a world that I had no idea what it was. And I was really taking a kind of a big risk, for me at least, in grade 11, that's what it seemed like. And so I was extremely nervous, but I trusted my sister and I enrolled into that class. And believe it or not, I ended up loving it. And then I took it in grade 12. I took the follow-up course in grade 12, and then I enrolled in computer science, and that's what I'm kind of doing now. And so I'd like to mention that, you know, if you don't have an older sister like I did, who kind of gives you good advice and leads you on the right direction because they know that it's something you'd enjoy, I highly encourage you to try taking a computer science class or some sort of technology class if that's offered in your high school. Even if you take it and you decide, hey, this isn't for me, you'll at least learn a lot of good problem solving skills, and you get to know what the computer science world is all about. And I think that's a win-win either way. I also want to add, for all the females and the girls listening, that don't let numbers or statistics stop you. You know, you hear a lot about, you know, there's X amount of women in tech, you know, a lot more males. It doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, if it's something that you really like and you want to go into, then do it. You know, don't be scared of those numbers, and you'll inspire a lot of females along the way as well. So fast forward to now, you know, I'm doing my university degree, and I'm trying to get some work experience along the way to figure out what I want to do. Because although I really, really like computer science and I want to, you know, do something with it, there's a lot of different opportunities, and you don't really get to know what to do until you get your hands dirty a little bit. So thankfully, I get to, you know, be part of a co-op program, and so I get work experience along the way as I study. And so these past few months, I actually got to work at Field Effect. I was there for 4 months, starting in January and ended just now at the end of April. And so my role at Field Effect was called a test automation software developer. Now, what that means is that I was coding a lot of different tests to run for a web application. Now, this web application is something that the clients of our company used and got to see their cybersecurity network on. So this was kind of an important web application, and we wanted to make sure that things are working as expected. And so that was my role and the role of other people on my team. What these things did is these tests verified that things work as expected, that the correct content is showing up, and that when a client user, clicks something on the page, the right thing happens and that the right procedure occurs. And so making sure that these things work as expected is very important for all types of companies. A lot of the times, cyber attacks can actually happen because there's oversights in code, right? And so by having teams of people work and write code that then tests the application and makes sure that it's always running the way it should be, it hopefully brings down the odds of something wrong happening, So with that experience, I learned a lot, and I had a really positive time at Field Effect. As a 4-month intern, I still felt like I did work that mattered and that people were listening to me on my team and in the company. Throughout my time, I got to meet a lot of smart people, like you see here on our panel. I also got to participate in a lot of different meetings, as well as attend a lot of informative company events. And so through all that learning, I got to learn a lot about cybersecurity, and I had never had experience in cybersecurity before that. And so now, after that experience, I'm considering going into cybersecurity after I graduate. So I'm extremely thankful for having that opportunity, and it really opened my eyes to a different field that I didn't consider before. So that's a little bit about me and my journey into the tech industry and what I've done so far. And now I'll hand it over to Iona to tell her about her story.
Hi, thanks, Olivia. My name's Iona. I've been working as a data scientist for 2 years at Field Effect. I'll just sort of go over how I got here. So my story starts a pretty long time ago. I was about 8 when I decided that I really liked math and I was good at it. I was like, okay, I want to do this. And my mom was like, oh, that's great. There's so many things you can do with math. Which I was like, sounds good for me. But that's the thing. There's so many things you can do. I didn't know exactly what industry I was going to go into. I was just like, I'm going to study math and I like it. And I had a passion for it. So, you take math throughout school. And then I got to high school. And high school, they had computer science courses. So like Olivia, I took my first computer science course in high school. And I really liked it. And I realized that programming and coding was a way to apply the mathematical concepts that I really was very interested in, and it was a way to automate a lot of that stuff. So I continued to take computer science throughout high school and university with thought of, I'm going to go into a profession where I can do math and use computer science to do the math. And so in university, I was also part of the co-op program, and I was able to take a co-op term with the government. And in this co-op term, I was introduced to the field of data science. Data science is a relatively new field, and I didn't know that it was a thing until I got there. But I realized, not to be cliche, but like I fell in love with it. I was like, this is exactly what I want. It's taking all this data and using math and computer science together to gain information and find what's important. And so that was when I kind of decided, okay, I want to go into data science when I graduate. But again, there are many career opportunities even within data science, because there's with all the technology these days, almost every industry uses technology and has a lot of data that needs processing. And so I I hadn't quite decided which industry I wanted to go in, but then I got a co-op at another government department in cybersecurity. And this went well, although I went in barely knowing what an IP address is. I'm pretty sure I walked in and I had learned to work with data, and I was comfortable with all the math, but I didn't know what a port was or an IP address or how any of that worked. But that was something that I learned on the job, and I was really interested in. And I think what I really liked about it was the fact that I was being able to use math and computer science, things that I really liked, to help people or protect the country or citizens or the general public. And so I felt that not only was I having fun and doing something I'm good at, but I was helping other people in the process. So after deciding that I wanted to go into data science and cybersecurity, which then is maybe more niche career path, I got a job at Field Effect right after graduation, and that's where I've been for the last 2 years. So at Field Effect, it's really nice because, as I said, I get to use these data science techniques, which encompasses things like statistics, machine learning, natural language processing, all those other cool models and algorithms these days. And I get to use those to detect threats in our clients' network and alert on them in an automated fashion. Because as I said before, we have so much data. We process hundreds of terabytes of data, and the attackers or the threat actors hide in all that noise, and they represent maybe only a few bits or bytes of that data. So it takes a lot of engineering and problem solving to build an intelligent solution to take that data and find the anomalies in it. And so really, it's not only my math knowledge or my computer science experience or even just cybersecurity knowledge. It's a combination of everything I've learned in my life culminates in these projects, in these solutions. And I guess I just want to also say that what's interesting about cybersecurity in particular is that it's what I think of as an adversarial field. It means that we have to continuously improve our detections and improve ourselves and our models and design new solutions to detect the new threats that are coming. Because every time you detect one threat, the attacker will or attackers will become more sophisticated and find ways to circumvent that. So it's an always improving and growing field of study, and that's what keeps it exciting. And so I will conclude with saying I am proud to be fighting this challenge with math and computer science. And now I will pass it over to Lisa, who is another veteran in the field.
Thank you very much, Iona. Yeah, so as Iona said, I've been doing this for a while now. I'm currently a senior security analyst at Field Effect, but I've been in the realm of cybersecurity for a little over 20 years now. Now, the funny thing about that is this is not where I thought I'd end up. You know, when I was in high school, I didn't think I was going to be a cybersecurity analyst. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in high school. I had multiple things I was passionate about, and I had no idea how to bring them together. So for example, at one point in high school, I thought I would go into industrial design. You know, I liked the idea of maybe creating something new and innovative, maybe figuring out how to make something that already existed just a little bit better. But then I also wanted to be a writer. I like the idea of telling stories, of like finding a narrative and maybe making people feel things. Like maybe I can make somebody feel happy. Maybe I can make somebody, you know, feel a little scared. Maybe I could just introduce somebody to a topic that they didn't know before and, you know, give them something new to think about. And it didn't stop there. And then I would learn something else. And then I got interested in forensic science and forensic psychology. And that was kind of nearing the end of my career in high school. So I honestly still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided I would hop into forensic psychology. So to start that, I did an undergraduate degree in criminology at the University of Ottawa. But as I was doing this degree, and I loved it, it was great. I got to learn about, why bad guys did things. It kind of introduced me a bit to the forensic angle. But as I was going through my undergrad degree, I just kept on playing with computers. Like me and a buddy would kind of maybe rip one apart, put one together. I had no formal education in it. I just thought it was fun. We would find old things and we would kind of rip them apart and do fun things with them. So when I finished my criminology degree, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep on going and do my full PhD in forensic psychology, because there was this other thing, once again, that I liked or had a passion for. So I went back to school and I took network communications engineering. I kind of did your standard IT work at first, and then I kind of fell into a job at the communications security establishment, where I feel so lucky because I was able to marry my criminology degree with my network communications engineering. As you've heard all the ladies on this panel mention, we need people from diverse backgrounds, and having those diverse backgrounds and diverse interests really makes you better at this job. So after doing that for about 18 years, I decided to go in the private sector. So I went kind of from helping protect Canada in critical infrastructure, and now I get to help protect the companies that come to Field Effect for help. Now, the one thing that I didn't notice until I was actually preparing for this panel, because I was thinking about all the things I was passionate when I was young and like what I wanted to be when I grew up. But what I realized is that at Field Effect right now in my position, I'm actually doing all those things. As part of my job, I get to design tradecraft to help us track and find bad guys or find bad things or anomalies that are happening on networks. I get to design new programs and structure that help us to protect our clients. I get to be a writer. A part of my position, I do these security assessments where I have to take a bunch of information, often very technical, and distill it in such a way that it's meaningful for people and they can understand it. And lastly, the forensic side. I get to work with an amazing team of people that do incident response and forensics on system. So that thing I wanted, when I was 17, where I thought it'd be really cool to walk into a room and do forensics analysis when something bad's happened, I get to do that virtually. So it's really cool to think that if you're at a point, in high school now, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and if you want to get into the cybersecurity industry, it's interesting to think that if you're not sure if you're following your passions, there's a good chance that your passions will be following you. So I recommend everybody, don't stress about that part of it. It will find you. So those are our 4 stories, and I'm super excited to think about what your guys' stories might be. Yeah, that's it for us. Thanks for your time, people.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all of you. And so interesting to hear all the different paths that lead in similar directions. Definitely a good lesson for some of the kids we've got online who some of them might be really sure about where they want to go. Some of them may have no clue and just glad to be here. Some of them might not even remember how they got here in the first place. Sometimes I feel that way. But thank you very much for sharing your stories. We really appreciate your time. Great. So, and moving on, our speakers are doing an excellent job today at keeping things moving. And if we don't have any questions from the audience, again, if anything does come up, we will email our panel with those questions and get the answers back out for you. But then we will move over to our last speaker of the day. And I know those of you waiting patiently know that with every speaker that goes by, you're a little bit closer to tomorrow and hearing your results. So we have Loudmouth coming up next, who was part of our development team this year. And Loudmouth is made up of Trevor Stavado, and for over 12 years, he has specialized in offensive security assessments for application and network infrastructure security. Trevor has led or contributed to numerous red team engagements, penetration tests, vulnerability assessments, threat and risk assessments, and forensic investigations for a wide variety of industry sectors. We also have with us today Trevor Huff, and he is a dedicated IT security specialist with over 7 years of experience. Trevor graduated from Algonquin College with honors in cybersecurity and has since obtained his OSCE, OSCP, and CEH certifications. Trevor has competed in numerous CTF competitions with consistently high results and recently winning the coveted Black Badge at DEF CON in Las Vegas. Welcome, Trevor and Trevor.
Thanks for having us. So we have a presentation that I'll share here. And I just need to find the right window. I'm going to move things around a little bit. Pardon my technical problems here. We practice this, but then everything goes haywire on the day that you're expecting to do it. So give me 1 minute. And just about there.
Too many monitor problems.
That is part of the problem. Too many monitors. Okay, sorry about that. And there we are. So we're going to talk today. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek presentation about how we became comic book heroes, but really it's a talk about how we got to where we are in our careers in this industry. So first of all, talking about who or what is Loudmouth. Loudmouth Security is a company of professional hackers. We're hired by companies to come in and test the security of a software product, of a network. We also do vulnerability research, so deep dives on devices, on technologies to try to find new, never seen before vulnerabilities in these systems. Basically, what we're hired to do is identify what a real hacker might do to an organization so that they can protect it and defend against it before a real hacker could do that. Some of the projects that we've been really lucky to work on the last year and a bit. Our first product offering that we've developed is Elliot, which is an extensible lab. You can see part of that behind Trevor. It's a lab of IoT devices where people can do research, configure CTF networks of IoT devices, and configure training exercises with these devices, so that helps promote research and learning of security around IoT devices. One of the other projects is Hover, which is our internal code name for the vulnerability research that we do. These projects span over a couple of months, where we take a very deep dive on an application or a device, and we do some deep investigation to try to find new vulnerabilities. And then one of the other projects that we were involved with over the last year that is very topical, given the current environment, is we worked with the government to help look at the security and privacy of the COVID alert application before it was rolled out to the public. We also are very involved in the community. So one of our partner organizations is Village Idiot Labs, which is that logo in the center. And from that, we do work with IoT Village and RFID Village. Villages are a concept within a security conference. They're sort of niche areas within a conference that talk about very specific subject matter. So we do things like run an IoT CTF. And we have RFID doors, mini doors set up, where we show you how the security of RFID access control systems work and how you can bypass some of those systems. We've also been involved with CyberTitan and CyberTitan for a couple of years now, helping to give back to the community and make sure that students and people coming up into the industry have as much advantage as we can give them, because we didn't have that when we were coming up, and we think it's only better if you have more experience and knowledge before you get to the workforce. So who are we? So my name's Trevor Stavato, as she mentioned. I have been in offensive security for over 12 years. I'm the founder of Loudmouth Security, and I was also lucky enough to win one of those DEF CON black badges that you see on the side there. Trevor, do you want to give a quick intro about yourself?
Yep. So I guess the first slide, maybe a little out of date now. So I've been in cybersecurity for over 10 years now. Fairly active member of security community, co-creator of the RFID Village, co-presenter of the IoT Village in Canada. Also was on the team that won the black badge at DEF CON. That's pretty much it.
But the other thing that we are also is, this was maybe the crowning achievement of my career so far, is we became comic book heroes this year. And that's kind of tongue in cheek, but just it's one of the fun things that we got to do as our company this year. So how did we get here? So every drawing has to start on a piece of paper. So for us, those were our university and college degrees. For myself, I did a Bachelor of Engineering and Computer Systems Engineering at Carleton University. That was, many years ago now. And at that time, there was no security element of the coursework. A lot of computer systems programming, electrical engineering kind of things, but security wasn't really a consideration in that at that point. But what it did give me was university or college, the process of going through that really sets you up for teaching you the skills and how to learn. And that's what's been really essential in my career in getting to where I am. Trevor, do you want to talk a little bit about your course, courses at Algonquin?
Yep. So I took the CST program out of Algonquin. At the time, it had a stream for security as a third-year option to kind of extend on it. Security wasn't really touched on the first part of the program at all. There was, a single course for it at the very end, and it was kind of like an afterthought, unless you really got into the security program. The security program out of Algonquin at the time, I know it's changed a lot since then. I felt gave everybody kind of the mile wide, 2 inches deep approach to cybersecurity, and kind of introduced everybody to a lot of different domains. And then you could pick up and go where you'd like to go from there.
And I think cybersecurity is one of those areas that's just so huge that you can't expect to learn everything at a school. It'll set you up to maybe have some of the basics and starting blocks, but a lot of the further learning will have to be done on your own. So the next step for us is we had to get a basic outline. For me, I started in application development. That really gave me a good introduction to how applications were built, and just sort of some of even the pressures that are put on development teams. At that point, security was not something that was considered in the development lifecycle. I think that's changing now, where it is more developers are more security conscious, and that's starting to be worked into it. But there's still a heavy pressure to deliver on time, and sometimes that means that security or security testing gets cut, and that's what ends up leading to the kinds of vulnerabilities that we find now.
And then on my side, I started at Canadian Blood Services in network administration. Actually, did some workstation administration, and then moved over to cybersecurity within Blood Services for a while. Kind of starting in the network side of things and on the system side of things, you see all the shortcuts people take and all the ways you can kind of mess things up. So when you get on the security side, it's really easy to kind of pick and poke at what you've done in the past and the shortcuts or cheats you found in the past, and how they could bring in insecurity into an environment.
After that, we both kind of did the same transition. I started working for a security group within IBM, looking at the security of IBM products. And then from there, I branched out into security consulting. I didn't do very much transition. I didn't do a lot of security research or educating myself about security before I went to IBM. And so that was maybe a little bit of a different path than what most people might take. It involved a little bit of dishonesty on my part, because when I went into the IBM interview, they asked me if I knew about security and if I knew about all these things. And I had studied very quickly before my interview, so I was able to spit back some of the Wikipedia definitions for things like cross-site scripting SQL injection, and that was enough to convince them that I knew what I was talking about. So then I very quickly learned on the job as I was doing the job. So that's a bit of a different path that most people take. Trevor took a different path where he did a lot of CTFs, research on his own before going into a security company. So then, Trevor, maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was still at Canadian Blood Services working in security. I decided that pen testing and vulnerability research was kind of the direction I'd like to go. So I started looking at certifications like the OSCP, started attending CTFs, played a couple CTFs with Trevor at the time, and kind of got into that mindset. I then transitioned out to a security consultancy where I spent just over a year. We worked crazy hours. I learned a lot, had a lot of fun. Got a ton of experience, and again, the learning curve was very, very, very steep. So I decided that it was going to be a little more fun to go at it as an independent consultant afterwards.
So then that leads us to where we are today, where we are comic book heroes, and you can find our first edition of our Loudmouth comics. I think actually some of the winning teams will be getting copies of this. Otherwise, find us at a security conference when those things exist again, and we'll have copies of them with us at that point. But that's sort of our path to where we are today. We're super excited and happy about where we are, and we love the work that we do. And we get asked a lot about how people can get here. So, our path is just one of the paths, or two of the paths that you can take, even though they were very similar. This is just one way. But in general, our advice would be start out after get some schooling. After school, get some experience in tech, whether that is in network administration or software or even tech support. Those kinds of jobs will help you learn about a lot of the tech that you'll be looking at from a security perspective later. Then the next step is you're going to have to do a lot of learning on your own, self-study, playing in CTFs, finding meetup groups. There's multiple meetup groups around the country that talk about security on a regular basis. And if you find the right organizations, the right groups, you'll learn a lot from that. And then find an organization that will provide mentorship. Companies like ourselves do hire security analysts that's at a starter rate, but we're not big enough to take on everyone that wants to work with us. So the suggestion, there are other security companies out there that take on juniors, but really check out how their mentorship program is structured and make sure that they're not going to throw you to the fire, that they're going to teach you how to work and how to do the things effectively. Some of the critical skills that we see and we think is valuable to working in this field is curiosity, having a burning curiosity about how something works. If you're one of the people that just it works, I don't care, that's not really going to be helpful for security. Security, really, you need to understand how does it work, because that'll help teach you how you can break it. In addition, to go along with that, you need drive, determination, and persistence. There's been a lot of times where I've worked at something for hours and hours thinking that it wasn't going to work, and other people might have given up, but then I just kept going, and it finally found the one little piece of information that I needed to make something work. And then the last part is a bit of healthy skepticism. You'll see a lot of advertisements from products and companies saying that they have the security solved. And we don't necessarily believe that at face value. We like to look at things in depth, make sure that all those advertisements are what they say they are. And that little skepticism helps you avoid some maybe some shorthands that you might skip over some things. And I guess that's the end of our presentation. Hopefully this was helpful to people. We're happy to answer any questions about our path, about suggestions, different meetup groups that we know of in different cities, anything like that. We'll happy to help out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And we'll take also this opportunity to thank you for the work you've done on CyberTitan this year. Can't wait for tomorrow. Any questions come in? I don't think they did. No? Okay, again, just feel free to send those over to Sheena and we will make sure. Oh.
Hold on.
Oh, fresh off the press.
Sometimes the sheer number of resources in CyberSec can be overwhelming. Any advice on how to navigate them?
Yeah, I think a common phrase that I use is trying to learn security on the internet is like drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much. My advice is generally to find an area of security that interests you, whether that's application security, network, or even more fine-grained and going into very specific pieces about that. For things like application security, there are really good resources like OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project. They have a lot of good information out there on the internet that can help you learn that. On the network side, there's a lot of different online CTFs that'll give you some experience to different networking and some of the different vulnerabilities that occur in the network side of things. But yeah, my general recommendation is to try to narrow down what you want to learn first, and then try to find the resources based on that.
And then the other question is that you mentioned those meetup groups, and I would love to know more about that. So that can be on here, or you can set a note for later too, whichever. Okay.
That's an easier question to answer, I think, later, because it's very location specific. We're based in Ottawa, Canada, and so we know very well the groups around here, but we also know some of the groups elsewhere around the country and some of the conferences elsewhere around the country. So we're happy to talk about that, offline.
Okay, great. And with that, I also just wanted to confirm that, yes, the winning team will be receiving as part of their prize comics that were donated by Loudmouth. So look out for those.
3 winning team, all 3.
All 3, the top 3 teams will be receiving them. Great. And with that, I'll pass it over back to Sheena.
Sure. So I would like to echo Diana's sentiments and thanking all of our presenters for today. Great presentations. I know everyone was enthralled, so that's awesome. I was in the chats on the Discord channel with the students, so I know that they are listening and they did hear you. They actually had a competition to summarize all the speaking notes. So that was awesome to see the engagement from that level. So maybe you spoke so well there were no questions. So that's all good. On the note, we will be announcing our winners tomorrow. So please, everyone, come back and join us tomorrow, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, for the announce of our Defender of the Year, as well as our 2nd and 3rd, and then the official champion of our winner of CyberTitan this year. Thank you, everyone. See you all tomorrow, and have a good day.